Hello and welcome. Thank you very much for joining. I hope you're all well on this lovely afternoon. Now, the main focus for today is obviously to talk about delivering online. And like with anything, you probably want to know, why do I feel that I know anything about delivering learning, delivering CPD, in particular online? Well, my name is Leon Haley. I'm a former head teacher, and I was really, really fortunate to be in a situation where I was leading the school a few years ago to the coveted outstanding grade. And so we feel like we have a lot of different experiences with the educational remit and beyond. And now one of the main things that we're always doing is we're always trying and helping to support teachers to CPD. So from those early beginnings after leaving formal education in 2016, I developed something to teach students online. And we've had over 250,000 people, 280,000 now actually learn with us. But more recently, we've been doing a lot of teacher training. And that's where some of the items that I'm going to share in an introductory fashion are going to help. Now, the elements that we're going to focus on today are going to be varied, but one of the main things I want to talk about first is actually our way we're going to look at how this is going to be. It's not and it's really important to actually get used to how things are delivered online. It's not a Zoom call, it's not a hangout, it's not where we all share different things. This is going to be really, really important for me to try and get as much information as I can to you, and I'm going to stop at different points for you to reflect and digest. Throughout the whole thing, in the chat section, you are welcome to drop texts and comments. They're really, really appreciated, and they're things that we need and that we want. This is also a supported webinar. There are colleagues on here as well who'll be able to answer things if I'm not able to answer them. And you're going to see in the different elements of the slides that there's two-part introduction to different items. The top part of each screen I'm going to talk about at length, should I say, and the bottom half is going to be more supported. Now, the option afterwards as well is to have a follow-on live chat, because everything I'm giving you here, I feel responsible that you've kindly given me your time. I want to give you some really, really good advice on what we've learned from delivering a lot of online learning. And I'm going to show you different use cases, especially with our own system, of how that works. Like what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter what system you use. The process of what we found effective in delivering good, sustainable learning for adults and learning for teachers is what we're really going to be focusing on. Please do comment in the chat if you want me to add anything or to move anything or to do anything else. I'd be more than happy to actually help and assist with that. Our current position at Guide Education is we teach nearly 8,000. We have taught some 8,000 teachers some form of training. And we have a 96% completion rate with all our courses, much higher than you would regularly see. We have worldwide reach. We're based all across Asia in particular, and also out in Australasia. And the majority of the courses that people complete with us are short courses, and we really focus on video. And I'm a huge, huge fan of sharing the idea of video-based learning. Now, it's not as hard as you may think, and we're going to touch upon some ways to do that today, what we do. A lot of what we do as well is level 3 and level 4 qualifications, HLTA and the AAT, and we've done dozens of QTS as well. Now, it's really, really important to remember that you will have your own training needs in mind, and you'll be looking and thinking at different items of what you'll need to deliver. So everything that I'm saying is going to be kind of general, and then we're going to start moving in and focusing more and more and more on how you actually implement this. And that's the last thing that we're going to end on, because it's the biggest problem I have with a lot of training that's offered. I have some great ideas, but how do I put it into practice? And that's what we're going to talk about towards the end. Now, training in schools, from what we've seen, and I've been lucky enough to work with hundreds of schools now. We have 450 schools around the world currently, and obviously as a head and obviously as an AST before that, I've got to work with dozens of schools. But your best content in schools is abundant. And you have to be proud of yourselves for that, because that's us, that's who we are. We are great at what we do, sharing best practice and understanding what we're going to do. The best content is available in every school. You can go to any school in the country and find something good that's worth sharing to train other people in. The problem is how you actually start to best practice share that, or best practice train with that, is very, very rare. Why? Because it takes time. And most schools you'll find, and you're probably agreeing in your own space and place, it's very restricted in the approach that you have. Now, one of the issues I was saying there is most schools are restricted in their approach. Now, where you're in a situation where the schools either don't have enough time, they don't have enough resource, they feel they don't have enough resource, and they don't have enough flexibility within a timetable. Essentially, one of the main components of training is for us to actually be able to show what we've done. And most of our training is delivery focused. So we're happy to give you the training. We focus on the content that we want you to have, but then we don't really care what you do with it. Now, if you model that and think about it, how it works with students, it works in a very similar fashion. Sometimes if we give you a task and we don't give you feedback, well, what was the point of giving you the task? Now, the clearest differentiator for us is in teacher training or in teacher development, we need time to be able to make those judgments. And what technology allows us to do is to actually shortcut how we would deliver them. So currently we're thinking very much about how the delivery is given, and we're not thinking about the learning or the implementation that comes after it. But again, technology can solve that, and I'll show you some of the ways we've solved it and some other solutions for it. Now, I think it's really, really important to just touch upon this base one, and I'll do a video going into this in more detail afterwards. A lot of our training is also led by requirements and not our values or our ethos. And that's really, really important to note, because as we go forward, we are actually in a, obviously it's not a good time generally, but it's something that we're actually going to be in a situation where we are in a very open and fertile ground and space. We're going to be able to change things because everything around us is changing. And that's what I want to touch upon now before we get into how you do the different training items. In this current phase, the first element that you see of training online, and even teaching online, we've moved very heavily into a space where we are replicating and we are not innovating. Now, that's not something that we should feel bad about or guilty about. That is exactly what should be happening at this time, because it's a brand new phase. We're in a knee-jerk reaction. We're scrambling to do as much as we can, and we're giving access first ideas. Now, the only reason we're a few steps ahead of this at Guide is because we've had to learn how to solve this problem a long time ago, and that's what we're going to be sharing with you, the ideas. And again, the implementation is very, very different. But the important thing to note is that you're at a gateway or a threshold that you've just crossed when you're starting to think about, well, how is this online learning going to happen? And the most important thing is not to worry about perfection now. It's something that you really want to be in a position where you just start to trial. Now, I've put these 5 words here for you, and I think if you're going to take anything away from here, it's really, really important. Whenever innovation comes, it generally comes about because of need. A lot of you won't be familiar with pitches and how a product is born, but a lot of the time when you have to go to an investor and you have to explain what it is you're doing, you have to be in a situation where you are explaining from the off why your problem's needed. What's the problem you solve? Why does it exist? And that stems from a need. And after that need, you think, well, this is a problem, that is a problem, this is a problem. Afterwards, we have some insight. We start to actually look at it and say, okay, well, what way is that problem? How is it differentiated? What's the changes that we need to make? And from there, we move on afterwards, and then we have to trial solutions. Now, we've done a lot of this, and obviously a lot of companies have done a lot of this, and I'm going to share some of those with you. And that's one of the main things. We have to trial, and we have to make mistakes. If you try and deliver online training, online anything, right first time, just give up now, because you're not going to be in a position to do it, because this is the key part. Refine. Even to deliver just this one webinar to you, I spent maybe 7 or 8 hours trialing different things, different webinars, even though I've had a few that I like. I'm a big Google fan, so I'm always using Meet, but this one was much better for the purpose, and so we've moved across to here. And the next stage that comes with that then is where we actually start to share. And that's really, really key, because the best practice, the proliferation of best practice as a vehicle online is going to be tremendous. We all know how useful the TES resource bank is. Some of you may know how useful Teachers Pay Teachers is. Everyone understands the importance of Twitter and sharing information. The speed at which we can do this when we get this right is going to be fantastic. So remember, in this first stage, if you're actually disheartened that you found yourself replicating items, take heart from the fact that you're in a very, very fertile period. And one of the best things about that in this innovative time, you have a chance to lead, right? We don't currently have a judgment. The UAE, as you may have heard, is in a situation where they're actually going to judge the schools instantly on how well they're delivering online, even though it's a totally new skill. We're not doing that, thankfully. And we've had that from Austin, that they're not interested in that area. And also, it's a chance for you actually saying, well, if it's a blank slate, what can I do? And what I'm going to talk about in the next couple of slides is a process or a set of steps to really think about driving there. But before I move on from that, I just want to bring your attention to this. At the moment, it's very easy to test things online. So let me give you an example of that. Imagine I was going to deliver this in a conference hall, end of the day, and there was 29 staff members who were coming across, and we had them all in front of us. I would have to, get my presentation right, get my speech right, get everything right, know what I'm going to say, and I would just talk at you for half an hour. Maybe there's some interactivity with the workshop. Online, there's a very, very key difference in that the tool you use can shape the training. So if you're using something more that's PowerPoint based, or if you're using something that's Quizlet based, or if you're using something that's video based, it changes the whole nature of the engagement and what follows. And you can test all of those as senior leaders in small packets or small groups with some of the people in your senior leadership team, or with friends, as I've put there. And when I say friends in this, you have to remember that everyone is on your side here. No one has great expectations of what online learning is or what online training for the teachers is. It's just really, really important to test the different things to try and get to some of the results or outcomes that you want. I'm a big proponent of benefit-led training. Now, I don't care what's said at the beginning. I don't care how much is said. I care infinitely about how it's actually used. And what you find with most presentations is they try and throw in as much as possible, and you don't know whether to take from A or B or C or D. You don't know when anything's going to happen or how it's going to happen. And then everything becomes very objective. We don't really know whether, so everything was very, subjective. We don't really know exactly how we're thinking about what we're presenting at different times. I'm much more into thinking about the outcome at the beginning and using video throughout. So using video to think about the benefits. What benefit do I want the teacher to get? What benefit do I want the listener to get? What benefit do I want the reader to get? We think so much about content. And when you have a content-first system online, you're actually very, very old-fashioned in what you're doing. The elements that we're pushing forward is simply to say, well, there's the content, deal with it and absorb it. When really we can think about all the benefits that are being drawn to us and how we're actually developing and taking stuff on. Now, the element that I focus on with video is to do with capturing and sharing and also thinking about how we improve. And as a side, you can actually use this with audio. It's not going to make a huge or tremendous difference in the way that you actually approach and do that. But think about your training as benefit-led training. So where does that actually help us end up? Well, we think about why we're doing it with video. Now, video in particular, if you'll excuse the old phrase and how we're doing it, we're thinking about seeing is believing. All my belief in video came about by accident. But one of the issues that I had is when I first became a head teacher, I took on a school that a lot of people didn't have any interest in taking on. And I can only categorize the culture of the school that I had there as one of abuse. And because I'd only worked in inner city schools, I was quite used to it. I don't know if a lot of colleagues are, but everywhere in the school was covered in CCTV cameras. And I'd been an AST previously, an assistant head in charge of teaching and learning, and I was always really interested in how people develop and how people train. And then what happened and what came across was, well, we had all these different cameras and they were something that were seen as a stickler for people or something that was difficult for people. Well, I started to use it as I said, well, I can't be in all the different places of the school, especially in a school that's not very safe. You've always got fires to put out. I know some of you will know what I'm talking about. And so what I started to do is, instead of going into being in full observation, I would drop in for 5-10 minutes, and then afterwards I'd ask a member of staff to see me, and we would play back some of this CCTV footage. And it was a revelation for me and for the teacher, because I would say something like, well, did you know you spent 40 seconds of the lesson with your back turned to that student that then XYZ? And they were like, no, I didn't. And you say, okay, well, here's a video. And they'd sit and you'd see them clocking the time to see how long it was. And obviously everything stopped being subjective. It started to become much more objective. So when we look at video-based training, it's not only in the fact that we can deliver through video because of how quick and concise it is. It's also so much to do with the fact that we can then review with ease. And also because everyone has a device where they can do different items of filming, or they can have school-based iPads or school-based phones that they can film things on, things like Iris, etc. There's so much there. But training moving to video is probably the biggest thing that will happen in the next 10 years, both in terms of the delivery mechanism and the assessment mechanism. It's huge. Now, this has been quite popular with different companies like Osiris. If you're familiar with Osiris Educational, they've been delivering the OTI program via video for a while. And also the Teach Like a Champion by Doug Lemov out in America. Again, they had great benefits with doing it, but it's very costly and time intensive. The way we do it is a lot easier to manage. So I hope that covers why seeing, believing is important, and that's the way things are going. And a big case for that actually is, just as I've noted here, Netflix and YouTube have paved the way. It's no longer a case where, you know, when we were studying and we wanted to actually learn and do training, we would actually go to a library and we would pick up books and we would actually learn and engage from that. Or we would go to training centers and have face-to-face items delivered to us. One of the key things that actually comes up time and time again for us is we are used to having to go and seek knowledge. But now we get to a pace where we're thinking about the knowledge is coming to us. Everything that we have with Netflix and YouTube and items that are coming like that, we're bombarded. And that's paved one element of the culture. And the second element of the culture that's really changed is where we think about YouTube. YouTube has become a huge fixeroo for everything. How do I paint a fence? How do I wash the car? How do I fix a radiator? How do I bleed a radiator? The other day, my kids wanted to go kayaking. We went kayaking. I was like, first time I went, I fell out. I fell in the water and nearly drowned myself. Second time, I was like, how do I get out of a kayak? Just went straight online to YouTube to learn it. So video has become a huge item there where we can actually help do this. Mark, I've just seen your question come up. I will answer that straight after I finish with this slide. Now, the other thing about video is it's very concise. So in the ability to record yourself once or twice on your phone, you will say as much in 2 minutes as you would have said probably in 10 minutes in a presentation. Another item is when you're getting the information across, because you're not looking to interact, engage, get everyone on board and follow, you're just delivering the information and they have it there forever. So it's a very concise mechanism for getting a lot of information across. And when we talk about video, and as I touched upon in the last slide, we're talking about video content, we're talking about video knowledge, and we're talking about video instruction. Now, this is key. One of the biggest differences in what we want from people is we're currently not allowing ourselves. It's so much harder for me to say to you, write you a long essay of how I want you to do something and fill in a proposal, or I can just record my screen. I can use something like Loom or GoVideo to record my screen and share those items. Now, I'm just going to break for a second to actually just respond to Mark's question. So, Mark, you kindly just mentioned how we got people to be comfortable with recording. In the situation I was in, it was very easy because we had dangerous context. Now, I know not everyone's in that context. It was very easy because we had a dangerous context. We need to be using we had attacks on teachers and the rest. So it was part and parcel of the school culture. People understood that the cameras were there for their safety. People are becoming more and more detached to cameras, but the change that you may want to put into your institution, want to think about, isn't necessarily people being recorded, and that's the difference. The way that, say, our system, many other systems, and even Iris now is set up, you can actually record yourself. We need to change the culture around the recording of lessons and the recording of staff away from you're now being observed. And we need to think much more about, hey, give me some information I can help you with. Capture a section of your lesson that I can then discuss with you. Let me actually implement and show you different ideas. Now, the precursor to that with the video support is going to be, or should be, best practice sharing. The leaders in the school, Mark, will need to be in a situation where they show good practice, good practice, good practice, and then it becomes a currency in the school that video is a way that we share what we know and assist what we know afterwards. And that's where you start that culture. But of course, if you walked into anywhere and you said, hey guys, we're putting 15 cameras in, no one's going to get on board with that. So first you actually think about making the best practice opportunity and saying that video allows us a best practice opportunity. And then afterwards you get yourself in a situation where you say, now we can actually use it as an assistance opportunity as well. And I hope that gives you some idea there, and I'm happy to pick that up with you afterwards as well. Now, the last item I want to say about this with video training as well, and Osiris Educational, one of our partners, we make videos for them and we help them. Obviously, they've helped over 1 million teachers in different face-to-face scenarios. And one of the first things that they tried to do is they wanted a very content-heavy supporting system to the video. And from our experience, we said we don't think that's the best approach, but obviously they had so much more educational pedigree with us. You know, they work with Karen Dweck and John Hattie and people like this. So we were like, do it your way and we'll follow. And then thankfully, a few months afterwards, one of the colleagues returned to us from Osiris to say it hasn't been as well taken as possible. And that's because we have to remember that because of Netflix, YouTube, incessant screens, etc., the levels of concentration and memory in humans is changing dramatically. What do I mean by this? Well, there's some strange statistics that come across from places like Singapore and South Korea, where they actually say that a child reading, some children find it very hard to concentrate from the left side of a page reading something just to the right side of one line. So used to they are things being bombarded at them. With adults, we used to have something in psychology known as Miller's magic memory, and we used to be able to remember 7 to 9 chunks of information, and we'd be able to piece them together. Now it's 3 to 5. And again, the way that we think, the way that we concentrate, the depth at which we concentrate is really, really changing. Video, although it's part of the problem, negates that. So watching, connecting, etc., is huge. And I would go one more step further and to say that storytelling or communicating with someone's face in the way that I'm sharing with you now, or in the way that you can see me, I would actually go as far as to say that this is going back to before we could all read. So go tens of thousands of years back, before we used symbols as much as we did. We wanted to connect with people, see them, and video allows us to do that. And the technology behind video allows us to do it quicker than ever, and it can be a big part of your training. And obviously I'll discuss that in more detail as we go forward. Next one we have now is types of video. Now, it's really, really important to remember that when we talk about video training and we talk about helping people in the lockdown, video training is as easy as logging into Facebook. So you can record something on your screen on your phone and, hi, this is me saying this about this thing and what it is. The second item is something called screen recording. Now, a screen recording would be the equivalent of not just what you're seeing in terms of the top right-hand corner. That would be a face-to-face. A screen recording would be this whole element here. And I'm just going to show you how simple it is with one tool like called GoVideo. Here you see this is what's called a Chrome extension. So you go to Google Chrome and you extend it. And here you see this item asks me to record on the screen and whether it wants to record my microphone or not. And so I'll start recording now, and I'll be in a situation where, believe it or not, I'm recording my screen. And you'll see here I have some tools where I'm able to say, hello, today in our presentation, we're doing types of video, or we're doing this. And now I'm going to go to a canvas where I can type anything that I want. And then I can actually make that training, blah, 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 blah. And the useful thing about GoVideo, and there's another thing called Loom, you see there I've actually recorded that. So I'm in a situation where, believe it or not, I'm recording my screen. And you'll see here I have some tools where I'm able to say, hello, today in our presentation, we're doing. I hope you can see that, and that is instantly saved to your clipboard. So that's how quick training can be if you're using a screen recording. I know some of the technology will be unique to colleagues, but that's how quickly you can get items across. Another item to think about as well is how you use animation. Now, animation, there's lots of things like Go Live where you can make quick and easy animations. And believe it or not, even with emojis. And what I mean by emojis is if you, I'm afraid I don't have one on me, but you're able to actually sign into different items where you put a mask of some kind of creature over your face. And it happens because the camera can recognize over you and you can see it and you can deliver training that way. Now, that might not be everyone's preferred way, but some people prefer to have an avatar of themselves in real life than they do themselves. Me, I know, unfortunately, I was born with a face for radio, so I'm very just used to just trying to get the job done in whichever way, shape and form things get across. Now, in any type of video that you're putting across, it's important to support it with different documents because that's a secondary item. You can do that and it becomes very, very easy. Now we come to the crux of how you deliver online and how you get good results online. And this is what we've done with nearly 8,000 members of staff across the world. And we believe in a very strong 4-stage training method. The first item you're thinking about is content delivery and community. Now, what I mean by that is you're giving information across, obviously, as I've said, hopefully through video, and you're giving people a chance to interact on it. And I'm going to demonstrate all these 4 items in a moment. In the second stage of your training, what we found really works is having use case of implementation and support. Now, what that means is from stage 1, I've taught you the basics of health and safety. And then in the community, in the space, like we normally do in a room, we actually support each other and say, this is how we're going to add different items here, there, and the other. I would have done it this way. I would have done it this way. Yeah. We support. That we class as phase 1, because that's where people are really introduced to an idea. The next part is where we start to actually implement it. So now I need to see you performing the health and safety process. Now I need to see you implementing growth mindset. Now I need to see you improving your behavior management. And that's where the video becomes key. Because normally for any of us to go and see that in a school colleagues, we have to go and deliver and be there in the space. What the phones and the video focus allow us to do is to just capture it in 20 seconds, 30 seconds. And I'm going to show you that working in a moment. Now, the third one is really, really important. And I would stress to you colleagues, especially if you're senior leaders, all the research has indicated that there is no better qualification, methodology, or anything of becoming good at teacher training or delivering CPD than the quality of the mentorship that accompanies it. And that is really, really key. The way that you can actually, so that you can deliver the content, good or bad, doesn't really matter as long as the content's there. The implementation where they first start to actually try and externalize and demonstrate what they think they've learned from phase 1, that's the second one. The key part now is how good the mentor is in being able to refine, cajole, support, push, restart. Sometimes a lot of coaches and mentors, when I'm like, you think you're doing what you're doing? You're not. And so you're basically giving phase 1 again, the content delivery in, say, phase 3, because it was delivered so badly in phase 1. So think about those 3 steps there. And the last one, obviously, and this is huge, is the outcome. Now, whether it's the outcome to reward, in terms of there's money for a qualification in a pay rise, or there's a new prestige, etc. But then the one that we all want, that self-achievement and fulfillment in how we've improved and bettered ourselves. And so that's the 4 stages. Now, I'm going to show you very quickly one way of doing this. Now, as I go through it, I will also say, or also mention, different ways of doing it as well. I'm going to share my screen here, just to give you an introduction to those different items, and you're going to see these 4 stages in action. So if you wanted to, in fact, I will take a screenshot before I disappear so you can see that in the chat constantly. I believe I'm doing this properly. So if I go over into the chat and I come into here, it's going to be much more relevant as we discuss and look into that. Unfortunately, I haven't managed to do that section there. This system doesn't allow me to do it. So I'm just going to show you the system, the 4 stages. I'm going to talk about them, but please just take a screenshot on your phone of 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll show you how we've been doing it. And there's hundreds of different ways to implement them in your own school, and we can go through that as well. So this is a portal or a system. It follows our general working technique of how we've actually managed to do things. And this we made for a company called Academics. You may or may not have heard of them. They are one of the largest supply agencies in the country. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to train their staff better and to train them remotely. Now, Academics, number one, they don't have educators mainly on their team. They're sales consultants or recruitment consultants. And number two, they didn't have time in any way, shape or form to leave their offices and go out and train people. So we took that on, but obviously we weren't going to then turn around and run around and chase everyone to support them as well. So this is something we developed 3-4 years ago. We've done dozens and dozens of people, QTS, HLTAs and the rest through the system to really, really support them. Now you're going to see what I mean here about the 4 stages. So the first one, in the instance that you want to be in, is we actually have some content. Now it doesn't really matter where that content's come from, but it's much better if it's contextualized. So if you can think about your learning, contextualize it, you go from there. So in this example, I'm just going to pick a video. And I'm going to remember that first stage where we're delivering and we're creating a sense of community. Now, this is what our system platform does, but you can do this on Google Classroom to an extent. You can do this on Microsoft to an extent. And I'm happy to discuss like different augmentations of how it works afterwards. So here we see a video. And in this video, the idea is that me or whoever it is, you would just watch the video and you start learning. Now, you don't start learning, you actually start absorbing. And there's a key differentiator here. Learning is as complicated for adults as it is for children. It happens in the future. Right now, I'm not learning everything, I'm being presented something. And we have to remember that with our online training, especially with video. Just because I've watched the video, I don't know anything. I just may be able to take some stuff. So here you see in this first instance, I have some training.
Hello and welcome.
It's being delivered
so
to
now
me.
we're going to be taking a look at teaching roles.
And then what happens in this version of the system is a question pops up in the middle. And when the question pops up, it's in a situation here where I can just write what I want. Now remember, I'm still in phase 1. But what happens afterwards in this moment is I can then actually look and see what other colleagues have written. And this is where we get the sense of community. Now this is key, colleagues. You can do this on OneNote. You can do this through Classroom in different ways. But the interaction level and responses jumped 80% when we started to use this technique. So you've had the video content, which is playing. I've been engaged because I've added an answer, and then I've seen what other people do. So there's a real cyclical loop there of actually 1, 2, 3, and that's phase 1. Now I've got my community and I've got my delivery wrapped up. Now the second item that we focus on there is, well, how do I know I'm getting any better? How do I know what I'm doing? So imagine that one of the tasks that was put to me there was to do X, Y, or Z. Then the second item that I want to focus on is I need to capture that. Now, because of GDPR, I can't actually show you, some of the classrooms that we've actually been doing and working with, but I've taken one online just to give you an idea. So here you see a teacher has recorded part of their lesson, and this is what I think the future of helping staff remotely is going to be. When they're actually in a context and situation, so here you're going to hear the teachers talking, and because you can actually add comments in different ways and work with different videos ways, you can use different items to do this. We can comment on the video at any point that we want with an interjection. And so here you'll
You
see
can't
an
even whisper
example.
about that. So that's your verbal warning. Okay, go to your seat and silently start your work.
So there the teacher's told off a
The
student.
interaction with Giovanni there is a really positive one and clear.
And now the feedback is coming precisely at the moment where it's needed. And this is what's really powerful about video, because there's no guesswork here. If we want to help people train remotely and actually learn remotely, there's no guesswork. It's this exact point where this happened. I'm telling you that's how it was. How many of you have actually done some observation afterwards and then had this conversation with a member of staff, and then you just have completely different recollections of what happened in the lesson? Why? Because you couldn't meet them till a week after, you couldn't X, Y, Z. With ways of actually working with video like this, you can see very clearly and competently how that happens. Now, the key item in all of this is always, as I said earlier, it's the mentor. If you have an idea, if I was going to do any training with my staff, if I was still in the school now, I would train them to be solid mentors. I would have them on mentoring courses, I would have them on support courses, etc., to actually get them giving feedback in a much more effective way. And that's the same as with teaching. Sometimes we really know what we do, we're doing it well, but we don't know really why it's working well. So we want to think about those items. Now, in this is where Zoom, Hangouts, GoToWebinar, Webinar Jam as I'm using, all of this becomes really, really important, where you actually select a time to feedback after stage 1 and 2 are done. So in this system, this basically turns around and it actually allows you to have the like a screen share, much in the same way that we're doing now. But you remember that quality coaching isn't to try and find out what's wrong at the beginning. Quality coaching with any of your member staff is give them the basis of the content that you want them to have. Then you want to actually be in a situation where you can see what they've learned so far and then feedback and interact then. It's a key component of training issues in how you actually want to use video and actually help and support. And then the last one, obviously, that's probably the most obvious and evident of all the things that we're saying, which is really where you're focusing on the reward, whether they're going to get a pay rise or a qualification, or they're going to support other people, or. Now, with your permission, colleagues, I'm going to go back to slides. I have run over time already, but I'll only be another probably 5 to 6 minutes in what we're doing. So again, please forgive me for that. But I hope it's been useful so far, and you've got an idea more about how you support people remotely, how you give them video training. And I am going to touch upon some of the key players in the industry to show you where, if you are thinking of actually directing people to self-learn with different items at the moment, you will have an opportunity to do just that. Now, the element that comes next is the thinking about why the training was needed in the first place, and also thinking about what type of training is needed. Are you delivering your training, or the training that you're expecting them to do at the moment, be it on video, be it on any other way? Is it learner focused? Are you thinking about what the teacher themselves needs? Is it going to be something that benefits their career? Is it going to plug a gap at the moment? Is it going to make them feel good? Because remember as well, even with like training that makes you feel good, or I'd say more kind of esoteric or well-being training, are still just as important in this period in particular as what you're doing. So think about what training is needed. I'd also think very happily about what the school needs are, because you're going to have an interaction between them. Too much of training is always based around compliance, getting to the next stage of a qualification. But I would actually talk about this and say, with the school need, how much of your training is contextualized to you, and how much of your training is also based around your values and your ethos, either as a leader or an institution or a wider institution as a trust? That, I think, is missing from a lot of school training. Now, no one, and this is why it's so important to capture your own training on video, no one can tell you, especially if you're a school leader or if you're someone who wants to bring about change in your school, no one can tell you what the values of your school are. No one can epitomize them as well as you. And that's why it's so important to capture yourself on video. And even if you're doing training CPD or reaching people in the lockdown by giving them positivity in the first instance, then you're on a huge plus. Why? Because you're in an instance where you're actually sharing your values, you're connecting. You're connecting and sharing that information. Now, in all of those, you'll obviously be thinking about as well about the levels of training and where you're going to up and down within them. But it's really, really important to remember first and foremost that you are trying to put the teacher first. What do they really, really need? And in much the same way that students can react, when a teacher says something is boring or this, that, and the other, well, someone who's been there for 15 years and they've seen, 50 to 60 one-day presentations that were never used again or brought up again, it's very difficult. With video training and using various online platforms to support it, you can actually track and hold, especially if you video the progress. When people see the point, they engage. And you need to think about training as a dialogue and a continuation, not a monologue. And much of the training we do is a monologue. And naturally, because we've moved on to this element of space now, hopefully it will become much more of a dialogue. Now, the next item is probably one of the last slides now. We're looking here as well at implementation, because I get asked about this a lot. And there's a very, very wide overarching idea. I would actually say to you, remember, implementation of video-based training or distance learning training is a marathon. If you're expecting something to just be bought and switched on, you're not really grasping the reality of it. And one of the key things in this, and I've come to the third one before I come to the second one, is trust. Ensure that the person who is delivering, sharing, promoting, encapsulating, incorporating the different levels of items here that you want to share, they have trust and buy-in with their staff. I think one of the colleagues mentioned earlier, how do you get people to trust you, this, that, and the other? That's not something that, how do you get people to actually be comfortable with that? It all comes from the right person. When you start to do this, you start to contextualize stuff. When you do if you give training that they could read in a book and isn't contextualized to you, you have to ask yourself why you're wasting your time and their time. You really want to do something contextualized, something they won't find everywhere else. Now, I don't mean do some piece of research that's absolutely amazing, this and the other, but when you talk about your training, you deliver your training, you talk about the rooms in the building. You talk about the corridors you cross. You talk about the best practice in so-and-so's room. You talk and share the items that are contextualized to make the viewer, the reader, the viewer relevant to them. And then you start to actually bring in, and slowly but surely you'll see that happen. I have seen it happen countless times where you take online training and delivery and training mechanisms from one person to 5 people. Within a half term, it's 15 people. And to get a shift in your school, you don't need everyone doing everything. You need a critical mass. And normally that's about a 10th of your school engaging in new practices and moving on there. And that's one of the ways that you actually want to think about how you're supporting and delivering different items. And this, I've touched upon contextualize there, so I think that's relevant for the point of the presentation. And then I just want to start to wrap up now by actually showing you some of the really good training providers that you may want to think about sharing with different people, and where you can start to actually what's the word I'm looking for? Where you can start to, the word's completely left me, but quality control, or QA, quality assess some of the items. So again, I'm going to share my screen. This time I'm going to share my entire screen, so forgive me if you see anything on the far right that just looks odd. This is just pictures of me preparing for the presentation and the webinar. One of the things that has great support and elements, and again, they have a great free section as well, a group called Spongy Elephant. And the Spongy Elephant, they're really, really good when you actually want to learn how to use technology. So, when we were talking a few slides ago about what kind of thing, is it for the school? Is it for this? Is it for the learner? This is a great thing to actually share. They've got a lot of free subscriptions for how to do basic things. Spongy Elephant's a great one to actually do. If you're thinking more along the lines of how you want to make sure that there's a base of safeguarding or something along those lines that's actually covered, Virtual College is one of the biggest in the country. I think all their courses are paid, a few free introductory courses. But again, if it's something you want to share, it's a really, really great tool to share. Now, another item here from an organisation that's actually done a lot of good is LendEd. Now, LendEd is slightly different. It's better led and government supported. And what you'll find here is you can actually search the resources and find different elements of training. So here, if you see, again, just because I'm assuming there's a lot of school leaders on here, you can see the different types of learning that you have in different items, how you do school strategy, how you use MISs, how you do CPD and training. And then you see, again, a range of items that you can browse, test, before you actually start to think about how you'd want to deliver in different things. And that one is LendEd. I will actually, in fact, that's remiss of me, I will come straight back into the webinar and I will share them with you in the chat so that you have them all available to you in that instance. And then obviously there is one more to go. And so here you have LendEd, and then you'll have again the Virtual College. Feel slightly guilty that I've clicked on an advert for that one, because they're going to have to pay for that. So there you have another one there, and then you have as well Spongy Elephant, and there we go, Spongy Elephant. And then we also have, of course, it would be remiss of me not to mention the items that what we do as well. But essentially, we're really about developing teachers. It's not just about, hey, how do you use a PowerPoint? That's not really where we are. We try and focus on the whole school path and the whole school career. Obviously, I'll share that with you, and you'll be able to see that we offer different packages. So you have individual qualifications, but then you also have packages that actually show you where you're going. And probably the most important thing is if you click on Find Your Perfect Product, you find yourself in a situation where you can, either you or your staff members can actually follow this through to actually develop and think about how you would go through that one as well. And that is there.